Hey, g'day, it's Preze here, back in the shop. Thanks for stopping by. In my last video I was making a pattern for a cast brass nameplate, and I promised you I was going to show you that process of melting the brass and pouring it into a sand mold. Now, in the meantime, I decided to upgrade to a graphite crucible, and these are readily available now and they're relatively inexpensive. I think I paid about $30 for this one. This is the type of crucible I was using prior to that. These are made from a heavy walled steel pipe. These are actually from hydraulic cylinder casing. The wall thickness there is about 8 millimeters, 6 to 8 millimeters. They retain their strength quite well when they're hot, but I've only ever used these for melting aluminium, so they never really get to red heat. And the technique I've used for lifting these is to pull them out by this pair of pins. There's an eye on the back which you can use with a steel rod to allow you to tilt that and pour the metal into the sand mold. Now these have worked great. I've got 3 of these in different sizes, and I've done, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 melts in aluminium, and they've worked every time. However, when I was reading about brass, the common thread was that the oxide from the inside of the steel crucible was going to break off with the intense heat, and it was going to contaminate the brass as it melted. So I thought, hey, well, I'm going to get a graphite crucible. That's the ideal solution. However, there's a problem, and let me show you what that is. Okay, this is my old furnace that I made, I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was made from 2 20-litre solvent drums. One formed the base of the furnace, and I cut down another one to make the lid. And these have been lined with a refractory cement. So the lid just simply swings aside, and there's plenty of room in there for the size of crucible that I was using. These are the steel ones. And I made this hook, as I mentioned, and this allows you to put the crucible into the hot furnace or take it out again. It's secure, it's simple, it's easy, it's great. And when you're ready to pour, you just simply hook the crucible out. The steel hook goes in the back of the eye there, and you've got complete control when you're pouring that metal. Now, when I upgraded to my graphite crucible, it's sort of, I measured it out and it fits in there. That's not a problem, I'll show you. So you might be able to see here that it's almost the same size as the cavity inside the furnace. Now once again, that normally is not a problem. In fact, my biggest steel crucible is the same size, but what I overlooked was that you can't use the same system for removing the crucible. You can't hook it with this lifting mechanism here, and drilling holes in it is bad. You're not supposed to do that. So then I thought, oh, that's okay, I'll make a pair of crucible tongs. So here are my as yet unfinished crucible tongs, and you recognise that it needs to have a metal gripper welded to the bottom of the tongs here. But when I try to get that in there, there's just simply not enough room to expand it enough to grab the crucible and take it out. I'll show you what I mean. So as you can imagine, you need to be able to expand this and then grab the crucible around its narrowest point, which is at the bottom, but I just can't expand that enough to be able to grab it. So I thought about it and went through all these different scenarios about how I was going to grab that crucible and get it out. It seemed like it wasn't worth persevering to finish these off if it wasn't going to work for me with this existing furnace. And that's when I decided, you know what, it's time to upgrade the whole furnace. Now when I made this, it was a big experiment. I didn't really think it was going to work, and as you can tell, I didn't really go to a lot of trouble with the finish on it. It was just sort of cobbled together from whatever stuff I had at the time. The problem now is that this steel casing is starting to corrode. I don't think it's got a lot more life left in it, so I figured that I need something better. This is what I'm proposing. I'm pretty sure you'll recognise what this is. This is a 40 kilo or roughly 40 kilo LPG cylinder, or propane if you like to call it that. And it's the same one that you can see in this picture here. But what I've done is I've cut this down in height. And this is going to give me a big enough volume inside there for that graphite crucible and still maintain the correct wall thickness, which is around about 50 to 60 millimeters of refractory material, which lines that. And just looking at the two here, you can sort of get an idea of the increase in size. Now, there's really no point going a lot bigger than your crucible, because then you're just heating air, and that requires extra fuel to do the job. So that's the subject of this video. We're going to have a look at building this particular furnace, and the material that I'm getting for the lining of this is called pyrocrete. I'll show you. Okay, this is pyrocrete. This one is 145. Now, this is supposed to be good to about 1400 degrees centigrade, or a little bit more. On my old furnace, it stood up to that sort of use on a regular basis. Never really took it to 1400 degrees C, probably to about 900, and it's been absolutely perfect. Nothing is cracked or broken or fallen away. The coating on the inside still looks good. Now, this stuff is not cheap. I think I paid $70 for a 25 kilo bag, and this is half a bag I had left over from when I did that one, and I bought 2 new bags. So for about $140, I'm going to have enough material to make quite a durable lining on the inside of this furnace. Now, the steel cylinder itself, I cut that down with an angle grinder, just slid it through. Just a word of warning, I'm pretty sure you've probably researched this yourself, but if you're cutting anything that's got remnants of propane or LPG in it, you've got to fill the cylinder completely full of water first. When that was done, I ground off the original top from the cylinder, and then I cut out the valve neck. Once again, this was done while it was still full of water. A little bit of water leaked out when I did that, but the idea is that the water displaces any of the remnant propane from the cylinder. It also reduces the airspace that can mix with fuel, so that any sort of heat or spark isn't going to ignite the remnants of the gas. And just bear in mind that the gas can linger inside the cylinder. There's a seam way down here which can actually hold remnants of gas. If that's heated, it can reach flash point and explode. Plenty of people have been killed or badly injured by cutting into old oil drums and fuel drums and so on. So just bear that in mind. You're going to do this, completely fill it with water. So now I've got my 2 pieces ready to go together, and we're going to have a look at making a set of wheels to go on this so it can be moved around the shop easily, and also making a lid system similar to this. Now, I've seen some of these furnaces where you just simply lift the lid off with a pair of handles, but that's slow. You've then got to put the lid down somewhere, and remember it's red hot underneath when you do that. The other type that flips up on a hinge like that means that you've got this incandescent surface radiating heat out at you while you're trying to work. I would much rather just simply allow that lid to swing to one side, so any of that radiated heat goes down to the floor and it's nowhere near your face. So that's the reasoning behind the way I'm going to do this. Okay, here is a very basic mock-up of how this system is going to work. So what I've got here at the back is a pair of wheels. They're sitting on a pair of stub axles which are going to be welded inside this rear tube. This is all 25mm square hollow section, and this pair of triangular, or these 2 braces here, are going to form a triangular frame that the cylinder will sit on. So at the back we're going to have another vertical upright tube. Inside that will be a piece of steel rod, and then this section here is going to be welded to the lid, and that's going to allow the whole lid to be lifted up and rotated out of the way. There will be a foot pedal underneath that operates that vertical rod. You've only got to lift it about 10mm to be able to clear the bottom part of the cylinder and allow it to rotate easily. So that is going to become my handle for the furnace, so I can move this around the shop. This bender is a replica of a Hosfeld bender, which is American made. It's a very, very versatile unit, and there are lots and lots of accessories that you can get for this. This one's been fabricated here in my shop. This tube bending die is just a piece of cast alloy. Seems to be okay for this light wall tubing. And if you check out this old Tony's channel, he does a complete video on bender similar to this. So yeah, check it out. It's a useful unit. Well, there it is. That's the basic structure all welded together. I did all my welding off camera because, well, I mean, they're perfect welds, but they just look nice ground off. You know, if you believe that, you believe. So this is the rod that will lift the lid, and that just slides down in there. There's enough protruding at the bottom so that I can lift that with a cam or a lever or something. And the main cylinder is going to sit on that triangular platform there. I'll show you. Now when I get all this filled with the pyrocrete and do all the rest of the stuff like cutting the hole for the burner and so on, that's going to be, I think, welded on. I'm not quite sure yet. I might clamp it. I would like to be able to take this off at a later stage, just for doing upgrades and stuff, so I may work out a way of bolting it on. But either way, that's going to be fixed to the triangular base. Now the lid section is going to have to get welded to this little extension here. And I'll make up a triangular filler piece to give it a bit more support. And that's important because when this is lifted and rotated, the entire weight's going to be taken by just this section here, this weld here. The carrying handle, or the moving handle, I bent this up from some ERW tubing, and that's just going to get welded to the back of that column, but it will need a spacer so that we can still pivot and lift the lid. Now you'll be happy to know that I resolved a couple of problems yesterday after my camera battery ran out, but I've fixed in place, or just by tacking anyway, the foot pedal that's going to operate the lid. So I wanted to try and keep this very compact. So this little lever here pushes on the bottom of the steel rod that raises and lowers the lid. So that's all working now. And the other issue was I wanted to be sure I could remove the actual drum of the furnace if I needed to at some point. So what I'm planning to do is to weld this cross brace into the center of that triangular frame there. This large section of steel here, this is 25 by 10, this is going to get welded to the bottom of the cylinder, and there'll be a single bolt that I can tighten down to clamp it all in place. And that way I can paint all of this frame and still be able to fix the cylinder in place later. So at the top I'm going to weld these two little lugs on, and they will bolt through the walls of the cylinder. And same deal, I'll be able to just tighten up those two hex nuts or hex screws, and that will keep the cylinder rigid at the top. My welding's not getting any better. Oh, they're a bit less tragic. Hey, they're looking good. Alrighty, so the next step is just to weld on these little lugs on both sides, and then we can drill through and that'll fix the top. I think I'm going to drill these holes through now and get the nuts or the bolts welded on the inside before I go any further. Alright, well, because I'm a complete idiot, I did this the other way around before. I put the hex heads of the screws on the inside and welded them, and I had the nuts on the outside. Seemed logical to me, but of course when you go to remove it, it's got to pivot from the bottom bolt. Can't lift it up, it's got to go that way, and the threads of the hex headed screws were fouling on these holes in the cylinder. So I had to grind it all out and do it again. Come on, Mark, get your shit together. So now I'll weld the nuts on the inside, which is how I should have done it right from the get-go. That's better. Alrighty, what you may be able to see there now is that I've attached the handle. And I didn't show that on camera because, quite frankly, it was a bit of a struggle to get everything to clamp in place there. It was awkward, but I got there in the end. Now, the next step is to attach this vertical rod to the lid, and I'm going to tack that down here. And I was going to cut a profile piece to fill in that space there. And I had some 6mm steel plate to do that. Then I thought, you know what, that seems like a lot of work. Let's just make something simple. Boom, there it is. Yeah, look, this was a lot easier than trying to cut something to go in there. So I'm just going to weld all the way around the top of that tube. I'll weld at the top of the lid. And for all those people who are concerned about my health and safety, I have ground off the zinc. So I'm going to be welding onto bare steel. Alright, even though that's only tacked, let's just give it a try and see how that works. And the idea is we push down the pedal, try that again, push down on the pedal and we lift the lid and we can swing that to one side. Now I didn't anticipate that the lid was going to foul on that handle there, but as it turns out, this disc of particle board represents the size of the cavity. And you can see there that it's just covering the edge of that cavity, so I'll still have plenty of room to get down inside there with the tongs for the crucible. Now when we come back in the next video, we're going to look at filling this with the pyrocrete and fitting the burner. Now what I've done is I've made a little PVC template here which represents the intersection between the tube that the burner protrudes through and the side of the furnace body itself. So that's going to go roughly there, and I can trace around that and cut that out with the plasma torch. And when that's done, we can go ahead and make up all the form for the inside of the furnace. And yeah, like I say, we're going to look at that in the next video. So the other thing I should have mentioned is that because these LPG cylinders are galvanized on the outside, it means that they're going to last a lot longer, and it's certainly going to be more durable than what I had before. So I think this is all worked out pretty much according to plan. I can just wheel that around the shop and put it away in the corner when I'm done with it. And it's pretty compact. In fact, the form factor here is not a lot bigger than what I had before, which is important in a small shop. So join me next time. We're going to get sort of all messy with pyrocrete and have a lot of fun. So join me then, and thanks for watching.